All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Advanced Kentucky's AP Computer Science Principles Exam Support Session. My name is Aaron Timmons. I'm the Mathematics Content Director for Advanced Kentucky, and we're joined today by our STEM coordinator and also presenter, Dr. Sheri McGuffin, as well as Mason County Schools, Dr. Sean Jackson. So we're super excited they can be here to share with you all their expertise and knowledge as the APCSP exam finishes up. I know it's unique this year, but they're going to give you a lot of insight as you teach it in future years. So we're going to go over a few housekeeping items right now, and we'll go ahead and get started right away. So before I move off the screen, make sure you have gone to that bit.ly link and downloaded all of the handouts or pulled them up in front of you. This event is designed for teachers to receive support and guidance for the APCSP exam. If you're not an educator, I don't know necessarily why you're here, so make sure you are not. AP and ETS were not involved in the preparation of these materials, so this is all based on our best teaching practices and knowledge. Advanced Kentucky's contact information, as well as mine, is up here. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions afterwards. Microphones will remain off, as well as videos for the entire duration. We will maybe do some breakout rooms here, so that'll give you a chance to interact a little bit more. In the meantime, please feel free to use the chat feature while we're in the main session here. You can chat directly with any of us or post questions to the entire group. KYEP 2020 is the website to go to find all CSP resources. Those include content review sessions for students, as well as mock exam materials, and today's recording will be posted by the end of the day. And with that, I am now going to stop sharing and turn things over to Dr. McGuffin and Dr. Jackson. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to, let me go ahead and share my screen here, and we will get started. So I'm Sheri McGuffin, and I am STEM coordinator for Advanced Kentucky. And before I started wearing that hat, I was an AP Computer Science teacher for 22 years with Nelson County Schools in Bardstown, Kentucky. And I've also been an AP Statistics reader for the past 5 years. This will be 6 years coming on, so I'll be a distributed reader this year. And then, so after teaching computer science for that many years and AP Computer Science principles for the last 3, there are lots of things that we've learned along the way, that I've learned along the way. I wanted to share those with you. I'll stop for just a second. I'll let Dr. Jackson introduce himself as well.
Well, everybody, Aaron, thanks for the great introduction to both of us, and I'm really glad to be here today. But as you can see what it says on the screen, I'm a Reformed high school social studies teacher, and what that means is that in 2015, I said, why are we not teaching computer science? We were, I was managing an iPad one-to-one program at our high school and trying to facilitate that, but we weren't providing any opportunities for students to take computer science, learn computer science. We had things like media productions and digital literacy, things like that, but nothing was specifically coding focused. And so in 2015, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back and get my doctorate in educational technology to get that endorsement. And so I've been able to have a really fabulous time teaching computer science to kids that you would think weren't interested in school, but it's made some really cool connections. In the past couple of years, I've also been district co-CIO. So that's kind of an interesting challenge, teaching half my time and being a district administrator the rest of the time. And I've read for AP Computer Science Principles since the beginning. I've been a remote reader for the past 2 years, and it looks like this year, since they are in desperate need of experienced remote readers, that I'm going to be a remote table leader this year. So that's my introduction, and you know what, I'm passionate about computer science, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thanks, Sean. And I think that's one thing that Sean and I both share very much. We are excited about computer science. We love computer science. We've come from very different kind of backgrounds in a lot of ways. And I really think that diversity in computer science and teaching computer science is so incredibly important. And so as we move forward, we just wanted to just kind of give you an idea of who we were and who's in the room. And as of yesterday's registration, I put some little smiley faces so we can see that we've got quite a representation across the country. If you do not mind, in the chat box, go ahead and type your name, what you teach, and where you're from, because we would love to see where all we have people represented from today. And as we break out into breakout rooms here in just a little bit, we'll get a chance to interact with one another much more. So like I said, tell us where you're from. We want to know who all is in the room today. So one of the things that we're going to focus upon, we had a mock exam that was up on the KYAP 2020 link, and we had the mock exam. And so hopefully you were able to give that exam to your students, because one of the activities that we're going to do today is actually looking at the analysis. So as part of the data analysis, of course, in computer science principles, we have the big ideas, the 7 big ideas. And if you look at those 7 big ideas and then just kind of break them down even further, in which we're going to focus on that mock exam and the big ideas, because AP Classroom allows us to do that so nicely. I pulled up, I wanted to show you just what a difference that the multiple choice test can make in the example of some student scores. And so my focus today is upon the multiple choice. And I know we're not actually taking the multiple choice this year. Students are not doing that. However, as you move forward in your teaching, and with us only having potentially just that create task next year and then the multiple choice, we don't know how things are going to be broken up yet, but we do know that multiple choice is going to be a huge part of the scores and for future exams. So I wanted you to see just specifically how incredibly important that multiple choice part of the exam will be moving forward. So this is from my digital portfolio, my dashboard from 2019. And what I want you to notice here, and last year when I taught this and my students took the exam, I had a strong class of students. I thought these kids are going to knock it out of the water. And if you notice here that I had a 46.7% pass rate, I was shocked by that when my scores came back. And so if you notice over to the side here that these are the big ideas, and this was a score report that I got back from 2019 with the students that took the exam that year. And I noticed that all of my mean scores here for my particular group were below the global mean. And I thought, well, okay, well, what does that tell me? So I went back to my other score reports and I'll look at 2017. Now, in 2017, notice there's a huge difference here. I had an 80% qualifying score rate. So 80% of my students in that particular year in 2017 had a qualifying score. Huge difference between that and 2019, you can see. But also, if I look at that score report, multiple choice wise in 2017, you see a huge difference. You see that my students that took the exam that year were above the global and state mean on those big ideas for those multiple choice questions on almost every single category, Huge difference. So, and I didn't pull these up here because I thought it would be too busy, but I went back and looked at the explore and create tasks, and they did about the same as far as what I could tell with their explore and create tasks from 2017 to 2019. But the huge difference was that multiple choice exam. Now, again, it's not going to make as much of a difference this year. We all know that. But in moving forward, like I said, as the test is changing, And then this is something we really need to look at. And so that's one reason why we chose to give that mock exam this year and have your students take that mock exam. So we could really just break it down into those big ideas and see where areas are that your students may need to work on or that you may need to focus on for teaching next year when you're looking at the multiple choice particularly, and how that's going to affect your students. So I wanted to show you first of all how these two things compared and what a big difference that the true understanding of those big ideas can make for your students. So if I also broke this down for that mock exam that was available to you to give your students in AP Classroom. So the big ideas and each of the questions that were mapped there for the qualifying scores from this score report, plus a kind of look at an average, a rolling average over 2017, 18, and 19. And for the questions for students with qualifying scores, if they received, or if they actually got 65% of the questions correct that dealt with abstraction, 75% with data and information, 65% algorithms, 70% programming, 75% the internet, then those scores actually related to those percentages related to a qualifying score. Now, of course, correlation is not causation, however, but this is just kind of a big picture kind of indicator of how we can look at the mock exam that you have given your students or you potentially given your students, and how those can relate to what your students understand from those big ideas. So,
And Sheri, can I interject
Break,
just one thing for a second?
Absolutely.
If you'll look at the two areas of data and information, and then the internet, those are two of the areas that are consistently high ask areas. Okay, so the multiple choice questions that come from being about data and information and about the big idea of the internet. My very first year, my students scored very, very low in big idea 6, okay, but they rocked out big idea 5, but it did not translate to the majority of them transitioning onto a passing score. So they really have to consistently be, since this is a computer science principles exam, they have to have a pretty good base for all big ideas in order to translate to that passing score. I just wanted to interject that from my own personal experience, how those areas really translate to the difference between a 2 and a 3.
Exactly. Thank you, Sean. And so moving on with that particularly, again, we're going to be focusing upon those big ideas today, and then looking at, by doing that, if you don't mind right now, take just a moment, and I have a Google Sheet that I've put into a drive, and then here's the bit.ly. If you go ahead and if you don't mind to go ahead and open up that Google Sheet, and that was one of the tools that we're going to use today to analyze your mock exams that you gave your students. So if you don't mind doing that, make sure to file, make a copy, and then retitle your sheet. I just gave you a sample there. You can retitle it whatever you want, whatever's going to be useful for you. And I have set it up so that if you have multiple classes of APCSP, or if you have multiple class periods and you want to do an analysis for each class period, I've set it up so that you can do that. So take about 30 seconds, go ahead, file, make a copy of that, and then we'll go ahead and kind of move to the next phase of the analysis. And what we're going to look at today as analyzing data. Okay. All right. So I'm going to pass off the microphone now to Dr. Jackson, and we're going to look at specifically analyzing data, how we're going to do that, and then we'll get into our breakout rooms so we can move forward.
So real quick, you know, I know the thing on everybody's mind is, you know, well, the multiple choice is gonna shake out however it is. You know, we can prepare and over prepare for the multiple choice, but when you look at how the students can really shine on the AP Computer Science Principles exam, which makes it unique, are the two tasks. So, you know, we will really quickly look over the tasks. Excuse me. And I've provided the scoring rubric and analysis sheet in our Google Drive folder. But then, as Sheri mentioned, talking about the breakout rooms, the very first time we go into a breakout session, we're going to be just looking at your own data. From the mock exam that you gave, you're going to break down your data in the spreadsheet. Then we're going to have those conversations that really translate to decoding. Okay, what does this mean? What does this mean for my class? What does this mean instructionally for me next year? What does it mean for me going and searching for more materials to provide in that process leading up to the AP exam? And then the question is, where do we go from here? Well, that's a great question, seeing as how, you know, we are going to see some exam changes next year, and we'll talk about that before we move on. But go ahead and go to the next screen. So the table that you're looking at right now. So this is my information from the most recent year. No, I'm sorry. This one is from 2018. Okay. And so just like Sheri showed you the breakdown that College Board provides you for each multiple choice area, broken down by big idea, well, the tasks are broken down a little bit differently, but it still gives you the area that students either score above the state average or significantly below. So even if they're below a state or global mean, it does it within a significance factor range. So like right here, you can see that it's not marked if they were significantly lower right now. That because it was from 2018, they did do a transition from where the data was warehoused. So it does look a little bit different than what it did in the past. But thinking about this, look at the areas where my students did well on the create task. And then what I usually do is just really go back and look, hey, what are the areas that they need to improve upon? My kids, you can see, they did about as well as everybody else, or within shooting distance of applying those algorithms. But developing an algorithm with a purpose, man, they can really, really improve upon that area. And so we do have some improvements to make. And last year's data, which isn't this, last year my students rocked out the create. They were above the global and state means for the create task, but they were significantly, I mean, they did not do well on the explore task. And that's my fault because I didn't do something to guide them well. And so this year I really broke it down into strategically into when we do this in the class. The explore task we do before we get into any true programming. Okay, so but before Christmas break, I structure it so that we have our explore task done, we've evaluated it, and we are ready to submit it in May, so we don't have to look at it again. Whereas prior to that, I didn't have a good structure. So just keeping with that, with the theme of thinking about the data that we have available. If you're new to computer science principles, you will be receiving this information, and it will be a powerful weapon in your arsenal to continue fighting for better scores for your students, because that's the whole reason we're here. All right. All right. Oh, up closing. It skipped my other. Why did it skip my other? Are you running the most recent? Because I have some links to my mock data in case they need to use it. I put that in there last night. Sorry about this. These are technical difficulties that you know, I create and nobody else understands what I've done. There it is.
There we
Still
go.
now? Okay, there we go. So if you are sitting there and saying, what mock data? I wasn't able to give my students an exam. Well, I've taken my historical data from my multiple choice exams, and I have put them on here for you to use as your data analysis materials, okay? So each one of these is actually housed in our Google Drive folder, I believe, if I'm correct. Maybe I didn't move them over there.
If it's not, the PowerPoint's there and they can just link directly from PowerPoint because they should have access to that as well.
Okay. As we're moving into our breakout rooms, I will also make sure that the links are there. But if you click on that, you'll see the PDF printed out report of the multiple choice. This one is from 2017. Again, there has been, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheri, there's been very little change in the multiple choice makeup of the exam since the exam's inception. Okay, so we are correct in that. So you can use this information just as if it were yours, just so you can go through the process of drawing some conclusions about the data presented to you. Okay, and it doesn't matter which one you pick, and you might be looking through there and you're like, man, this guy doesn't teach his kids anything. You know what? Okay, guys, you go ahead and be the judge of that. That's fine. I'm here for you. You can judge me freely. That's why I'm here. Okay, it won't hurt my feelings one bit. But so I think we're going to get ready and go in these breakout rooms, right, Sheri?
Yeah, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to break out into 2 different rooms, and so that's where you will have a chance to actually pull up your mock exam data. And I have actually put a file in the Google Drive that you have access to, and that goes through. If you don't, if you want to pull that up, it's step by step. So it's walking through. Let me actually move this out of the way. There we go. So it walks you through step by step to pull up your mock exam data, and then some steps to get to those specifics, and then to put your data in the spreadsheet student by student. So what you'll do is you'll walk through student by student, and then you're going to tally from those from that mock exam the percentage that your students got correct under each big idea. And so the questions are actually, they're laid out here in the document. So each question from the mock exam is broken down by big idea. So that will help you to tally a little bit more easily. All right, so as you go into the breakout rooms, and we'll just split these up evenly, and Sean and I are going to be kind of starting with 1 room each, and then we'll kind of flip-flop back and forth to see if there are questions. And so we'll go ahead and do that, and then when you're in those breakout rooms, feel free to open up your video, feel free to open up your microphone, and that's the time to ask individual questions. So
Right.
This is the time. We want it to be fluid, to be interactive. So open up your videos, open up your microphones, ask those questions if you have burning questions. If we don't know the answer, we can find out the answer. Sean and I we've been doing this long enough that we're pretty adept at things, but you know how it is. There are always things that come up that we may not necessarily, that we may have to feed off of each other. So
True.
it's good that we have the smaller cohorts. All right, so let me see here.
Sure, are you able to do it, or did you need me to do it from?
I need you to
my
do
end?
that because I don't have access to do the breakout rooms. And so we're going to break out with 2 in there, Aaron.
All right, hang on just 1 second. All right, so as soon as we click the button here, you will get an invite to your room. Please go there, and then we can broadcast messages to the entire group, and then just be paying attention to the chat in case we need to call you back to the main room.
And Aaron will shoot for 11:15 to come back into the main room. And if we need longer, then I'll shoot you a message, okay?
Sounds good. Here we go.
Okay, great.
Yeah, my guys are coming back from. Oh, there they are. Okay, good.
They were taking a break, so here they are. So yeah, I just wanted to go around and because I know within my breakout room, we were doing some things that were different. I know that Tracy was actually analyzing her mock exam data, and then we also, while she was analyzing her data, we were looking at some different kinds of score reports, and we were also looking at explore and create tasks and looking at past examples and different ways that we can communicate to our students without coaching them or providing feedback, so that as your students are actually completing their explore and create tests, that you can communicate with them but not have a completely hands-off attitude, so you can do things that are legal in that way. So Tracy, I want to hear from you first, if that's okay. So what kinds of things did you see with your mock data as you were going through your students' results?
The ones that I expected to do well did. I was kind of disappointed. I had 5 that didn't even bother to log on to take it for me, even though I changed the ending time 3 different times for them. But I was surprised with a couple of them that certain parts of it, I wasn't sure they got the point, but according to their test scores, they actually did. So I was pretty pleased with that.
Which of the big ideas do you think your students did better on than others?
Let me look at it right quick. Let's see. I had 6. 3 of them got 100% of them right, and 1 got 75% of them right. And then the next best one was probably Big Idea 2. I had 3 100% and 3 75%.
Sheri, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So which of the big ideas do you think were probably weaker ones that you may need to focus on more next year?
Probably 4. I had a couple hundreds in that and an 80, but there were several 60s and a 40% and actually a 0%, which kind of surprised me on that one. So it looks like 4 probably would be one that I'd need to focus on maybe a little bit stronger for them.
Gotcha. Okay, anyone else that analyzed their student data? Sean, and who in your room worked on analyzing some of their student data?
Well, I know Angela and Stephanie and Jackie all had student data to look at. Dana took my aggregate data from last year and just tried to look at that and cross-reference that with the big idea to see. So I told her she needs to judge my performance, and that's just fine by me. Anybody want to jump in there first? Jackie, Stephanie, Dana? Anybody want to just kind of come out with what they saw either from their students or about my students?
Well, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to 100% mention, but I'll go ahead. I'll be that guinea pig.
Yeah.
Um, I'll say that a lot of my students where they scored the most in were algorithms and programming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the biggest chunk. And then I think the internet actually was my lowest, but there was only 2 questions too.
And literally every year, that's what my kids struggle with. And I'm wondering if I even revisited it at the end of the school year or before we ended, regular session. I revisited the internet topics because if you think about most of the curriculum providers, all of the internet stuff is shoved at the beginning of the course. And then you don't necessarily revisit that continually, especially after first semester. So I intentionally went back and looked at that. But did anybody else have the same thing on questions dealing with the internet where they were shocked that they were low?
Mine was actually the highest.
Oh, okay.
I don't
What was
know
your
why.
strategy?
Yeah.
My programming was the lowest, but that's because I didn't get to really teach the programming before. I mean, anything.
Right. It's where where structurally that you probably were like a lot of us, where our programming we try to keep to the end so that we can really get those create tasks the way they need to be, right before the exam. And so I think that's just the timing element of it. But if your kids did really well on the internet, that's great.
Oh, they didn't do really well. It was the highest. It was at 60%, which isn't great. It was just the highest.
Are you using code.org?
Yes.
Okay. Ours are one-to-one, and they were able to bring their devices home. I think that helped a lot with working on the create task. At least those who are choosing now to then do the work.
I agree. We're one-to-one in my district, and so we've been doing that since 2012 is when we started that. So they're used to having devices, and about 85% of our kids have access to the internet at home. So it does make a huge difference. And don't get me wrong, not every school district is like that. We still have those gaps. Like I ran my personal hotspot. I'm getting ready to pick it up this afternoon and take it to another student so they can finish their exam. So not everybody has that available. So it's created a very distinct, finally people are noticing that the digital divide is alive and well in school systems, and at least people are at least talking about addressing it. But we've been talking about it on and off for the past decade. We need to really bite the bullet and do something. And I'm not saying that that's the school district's responsibility. This is me as a district technology coordinator, chief information officer speaking. I don't think the responsibility lies solely with each school district to do that. I think it has to be a comprehensive effort. Now, Mark, quick question: do you use the code.org as well?
Yes, we use the code.org, and our students have what we call the freshman laptops. And then those that go on next year, they get some really cool gaming laptops. So that's their incentive to use. And then we have, WIMOs or whatever they check out for the students who have internet access at home. Mm-hmm. But we've been really pushing folks to go ahead and get on board with Comcast during their free extended trial during this issue.
Oh, that's awesome. So Mark, do you know Matthew Jefferson? He's a facilitator for code.org.
I have not met Matthew Jefferson.
Okay, he's a really, really good guy. I just know he's in the Houston area, so I thought I'd name drop on you.
I'll look up.
Well, Mark also mentioned, and this is his first year teaching CSP, and so what were, not using the mock exam, but maybe what were some of your takeaways that you had from today's session, kind of looking at it from a first year computer science principals teacher's perspective, and maybe you need to look at differently for next year?
Well, I really like looking at some of the older examples for the mock explore task, because we keep looking at the same Bitcoin or whatever one, and it gets kind of stale, and I'd like to be able to draw in some more examples for the kids to look at. So going back to those older ones is something we haven't done. I don't want to show them focus on what not to do. I want to focus on some really good examples so they get some good ideas.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and I know that's one thing that we mentioned during our breakout session is that you can't specifically give your student, you can't coach them in this phase as far as with the explore and the create task, but you can refer them to examples, past examples, and that may be something similar to what they're working on so that they can have, say like, oh, hey, maybe you want to take a look at this, see how it was scored, and look at the commentary and then the scoring on it so that they have models to go by. And again, you're not coaching them in that way and saying you did this right or you did this wrong or you maybe need to change this, but having them do the work and then you steering them in the right direction.
Now, I have a ton of students who've uploaded, but they've not submitted for the Explore task. Can they now, if they've lost their local copy, can they now download and edit, or is there a way to do that? If it's supposed to be PDF, I realize, but there are PDF editors out there.
From my understanding, and the way that my students did it in the past, if they've submitted as a draft, they can still unsubmit, and then they can just upload whatever that they have that they're working on now.
I'd be curious to see if they can actually access the old one and tweak that in case they've lost their materials with this whole teaching from home.
They should be able to, so if I go on my digital portfolio site and notice that somebody has that triangle caution sign, I guess you could say, I know I can view that information, but they can also view the document that they've submitted and review it before. I mean, they have to review it and say, yes, this is the right document before they submit as final, and it makes them download it and view it again, so that they will have access to everything that they've uploaded. They can even view what they've submitted as final. Now they've changed the way, like we used to be able to, and I've never had to do this. As teachers with digital portfolio, after they gave the check mark and said submit as final, there was a window of opportunity for us to go in there and say unsubmit this. And right now, at the very top of that digital portfolio page, it has a warning. It says you can only do this if you have never graded or given feedback on this element. It's really trying to push teachers to make sure that we still maintain the integrity of this exam experience. So,
but they can still self-unsubmit, right? Or do we have to do that for them? Because I have one that's submitted too early.
I'm going to have to check on that. I'll navigate over there right now because, again, they did update the server that actually ran that submission. Well, they did two things. They updated the front end first on the submission side, and then the back end of that server used to be an old IBM enterprise data processing server that held all the information and gave you those instructional reports. Well, now they've just merged those two systems, and so I'm not sure what they kept from the new and the old system. So I'll navigate over there right now as we continue to talk, and I'll double check and see what we can actually do. Good question, though.
That'd be great. Angela, we haven't heard from you yet. Did you work on your mock exam data?
Yes.
And what did you find out?
I don't know if this is high, if this is normal, but their highest one was the third one at 80%. And then the internet and abstraction was at 77, and then algorithms was 73, and program was 65 for the class, for one of my classes.
Okay. And I have the qualifying percentages up on the screen there shared. Can you see those?
Okay, is that what the qualifying was? Okay.
From the last 3 years, the averages, if students got these percentages correct on their exams, multiple choice wise, then they got qualifying scores.
Okay.
So you have to compare.
So it looks like they would have done pretty good, except for my programming was a little bit low because we didn't do as much in programming.
Yeah. And probably like Stephanie, good grief, I don't know if Stephanie, how many days were you in school actually this entire semester, Stephanie?
Not nearly enough.
Yeah.
our last day is Monday, so
prior to, you know, the starting March 13th was when the students had their first day not in school. So their
Right.
last day was March 12th. But prior to that, we had also already missed 15 days between January and March.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, that's 3 instructional weeks already. So I only got to do about 4 weeks of any programming with them because I wanted to finish up some
Mhm.
explore stuff after Christmas.
So Angela,
And
your takeaways, then you think as far as looking towards next year where multiple choice is going to be a huge factor in a qualifying score for the exam?
I feel good about it. It seems like that I really enjoyed the internet unit, so I think I thought maybe I spent too much time on it, but maybe I didn't. So I really like the internet unit. The programming actually is my least favorite because I'm still getting used to programming myself. So if these are going to stay the similar questions, I feel like I could build on this and continue to improve their skills.
Yeah. And of course, none of us can kind of really tell for sure, but from the conversations I have had with those that are in the know as far as test changes and things like that for next year, the multiple choice itself is not going to change significantly enough. The structure should look similar. There may be some changes, but as far as like mapping to the way that big ideas, yeah, that really shouldn't change as much. Dana?
Mark, back to your question. I went over here and looked, and so if you go to the digital portfolio website and you can view your class and see all the names, if a student has a black check mark, you click on that, you'll have kind of a preview window of that student's submission. Up at the very top are a couple of tabs. One of them says return file to student. I believe that is the only way a student gets that back after they've clicked the submit as final. So the only reason you might do this is if they still had their name somewhere in the document. So they're really trying to make sure that you don't go back and read it and say, this isn't good enough, do it again. That would be in a violation of that feedback. Okay. Yeah. Now, I will tell you that I've usually in the past been a stickler on, you know, if they're using the create template that I give them as a file that I send out through Google Classroom, you know, if I say make a copy for each student, it will automatically append to have their name at the beginning. And I'm usually a stickler and say, you can't have your name on the file name. Well, that's not exactly true, because guess what? When the reader gets it, it's going to have a new file name anyway. So if their name is part of the file name, it really doesn't matter. Their name can't be in the writing anywhere. That's the big stickler. And nothing. Yeah, go ahead.
In fact, I had a student that I'd actually had to call College Board about that a couple of years ago. Had a student that had his name within the document, and he had submitted for under final, and they did tell me that would not count against him. But
no,
yeah. So it's definitely not something you want to encourage, and if you can fix before it gets to a final submission, it's what you want to do. But
yeah,
it's not a make or break.
And really this year, I'm not going to be a stickler. I'm not going to say, hey, you need to change your file name before you submit as final. I want people to submit as final. That's all I care about. Get it on there. If everything else looks good, then let's roll with it.
And Sheri, you're actually saying yours was on the form for this one student and they still did not count it against the student.
Correct. His name was at the top of the document, of the final document.
I can't tell you how many explore tasks I've graded in the past that have their name somewhere in it. And we're just told to overlook it unless we recognize the name of the student.
Right. And that student, that he still ended up with a qualifying score of a 3. So it it was not a make or break for him.
Now, Sean, what do y'all do if the video is like 1 minute and 1 second? Do you stop watching it there, or you just give it a just don't score it?
We keep watching.
We are supposed to, the way we've been trained to do it for Create is we watch as much of the program or as much of the video as we need to be able to assess, do they have one aspect of their program running? When I have graded Create in the past, most times I didn't even look past 10 seconds. So as long as I see one aspect of the program running, I'm moving on. So
Yeah,
I tell my,
I think that's the common theme, because I've graded the Create the past 2 years, and if I see it working within the first 10-15 seconds, I'm gone. I have too many to keep grading.
Yeah.
And there was an instance where I had a video that glitched out, and it was 55 minutes long. At that point, you just they push it up the food chain.
Yeah.
But if they're slightly over a minute, they're not going to necessarily disqualify. We just don't want to encourage
No.
that.
No.
So Dana, we haven't heard
Yeah.
from you yet. And so what have been your takeaways from today?
Yeah.
Sure,
Tell me
so-
how I did.
Yeah, I was analyzing Sean's thoughts since I'm in New Jersey and we're still in school until June 12th. So I didn't have a chance to give the mock exam because we're still working on curriculum. Let's see. His best category was definitely the abstraction. And the worst scoring one was the global impact. So was like neither one was the most covered material, that data and information, or the internet. They definitely fell, somewhere in the middle there. I noticed for the creativity, it said there weren't enough questions. Sean, have you had a chance to look at that? Did that mean there weren't enough questions on the exam for it to give you a score?
Are you talking about Big Idea 1?
Yeah, Big Idea 1, creativity.
Big Idea 1 is not assessed by multiple choice. It is embedded into the Create task. That's where
Gotcha.
That's where they hit that big idea. And then the last, what's the name of the other big idea for the Explore task?
Global impact?
Global impact, yeah.
Global impact is what they hit with the Explore task.
Okay, yeah. And I think you mentioned it earlier, that was your lowest scoring, but hey, whatever. And then I just wanted to mention, I've done something different with the code.org curriculum. Some people were speaking about that earlier. In a different order the past 2 years. And last year, my scores were pretty good. So I just wanted to share. I've done the Unit 1, Chapter 1 of the Internet first, and then Unit 3 and Unit 5, and then the Create task. And then I've gone back and done Unit 1, Chapter 2, that Internet unit, and then Unit 2, Unit 4, and then the Explore task at the end. And
interesting.
That way my students weren't scoring poorly on that Big Idea 3 or 6. So just an idea. I just wanted to throw it out there.
That
And
is
Dana,
that's a good structure.
Yeah, I did the exact same structure last year, and back and analyzing my data, and my students did not do as well as multiple choice, but they're exploring Create tasks. They were above average global and state on almost every single category. So same structure. I just didn't hit last year the multiple choice hard enough, whereas the previous years apparently I did. So I think I was focusing more on the Explore and the Create, particularly probably the Create task, but same order.
Right. Yeah, I got the idea from a Facebook group a couple years ago.
Good work.
And guys, I've got one idea for, how students tend to slack off right before Christmas. They're not working really hard. We bought some
My
robots.
students don't do that. No.
You don't make them do that. No. I'm a that teacher. Okay, so we spent about $900. These are the little maker box. Of course, the other ones too, the MBots. And we had them programmed there, and there was a video at the end. So they didn't get finished with their programming. They couldn't watch the video. They had to go out in the hall with me and work with me, one group at a time and get it figured out. but we had them do a little sample. They did some little playing around first, and then they had to actually achieve certain goals that I set for them. And we built the robots during like one day of class time with me taking my lunch off for my 2 periods, and we got it all put together.
Good idea.
Cool. Cool. Joanna, we haven't heard from you.
Yeah, my video was blocked, but so I'm not teaching it this year. So I looked at my data from last year, and I shared with them that my Explore task was, they were my lowest scores. It makes sense to me as a teacher that that's probably, I did not enjoy doing the Explore task. So that would be something I would need to look at and to make sure I'm hitting those standards, even though it won't be assessed in the same way.
Yeah, it's like good thing the Explore task is going away for you then, right?
Yes, I'm not upset about that.
Neither am I.
So any other takeaways as far as analysis from what we did with the mock exam, or any of the other work that you did today, or any other things that you want to share? There are other readers in this group. So any of you that are also readers, that you have any tips for teachers before they finish up their school year? And that's an open invitation.
I don't know. I think this year is just so weird. I don't know if any of the advice we give would be very applicable.
My big thing is just make sure they submit something. Okay? Because guys, even at the bare minimum, if they submit something and it's a computing innovation, they can get 1 point on their Explore task, as long as it's a computing innovation and they have that kind of infographic or computational artifact, it checks out. Now, in years past, they've said about the Explore task, which is why the validity of the Explore task has always been in question. They said, if they have an infographic about any type of innovation, it counts as a point. And we've been told to grade it that way. So the very first year, I graded somebody who talked about fishing lures. Had nothing to do with computing, had nothing to do with anything, and I had to give that person a point because that's what the chief reader said. So
along those same lines, back in 2017, I had a student that was out on medical leave for probably a good month of my class. He submitted an incredible create task, all parts of his create task. He was a good multiple choice tester, did not submit the Explore task at all, but still ended up with a qualifying score. So, if you have, because I know that sometimes you have those students that feel like if they don't complete every single checkbox, you know, hey, that I failed in some way. That's what goes on in their minds. But really, again, just like Sean said, getting them to submit something is huge. And so, just letting them know that everything doesn't have to be exactly perfect. You just getting it submitted, whether it's 2 days ahead of time, a week ahead of time, or 11:55 on the night that it's due. And before, I've had students that have done that. They waited until, one student last year, 11:58. I kid you not, 11:58. And luckily I knew his parents, and so I was texting them frantically back and forth, has he submitted yet? But he finally did. But getting them to submit something's huge.
And exactly. And I'll just tell you, the very first year when we were grading in Kansas City, I think it was Wednesday night. Somebody correct me, or if somebody remembers getting this email, we had already graded all day, and we finally got some survey that evening that said, what is the minimum score that a student should be able to get on the Explore task to qualify for a passing score? And then they asked the same questions about each element of the create task. And so the readers got to give their opinion on what is the minimum score to pass the exam. I don't know if I don't think they've done that. I just distinctly remember them asking, what should the minimums for these tasks be to pass the exam? I anticipate that they're going to ask us that again this year because of how different it's going to be. I think we're going to be asked a new kind of score range, unless the chief reader already has it in his mind, and they've kind of already discussed that. But we have had a unique opportunity as computer science principals, teachers, and readers to really influence the way this exam is structured and how it runs. And it's still always developing because of how new this is as an exam. So each and every year it could change just a little bit. Just always keep that in mind. Yeah.
If you have not applied to be a reader, do it next year. And your input is so incredibly valuable and important. This exam is still new enough that, number one, there are lots of positions for readers, and number two, the input that you give is valued. And there's really not necessarily the be-all and end-all way that things are run and done in computer science principles as far as scoring goes, because it is changing. So if you have not applied to be a reader next year, do it for sure. I would recommend it wholeheartedly.
I agree.
I know from my experience, it's probably the best professional development I get all year, just because I'm getting to, really see how other students respond to the create tasks, and how, and just being able to talk to my table leader, because I've only ever done it as a distributed reader. It helps.
And it doesn't matter how many years you've taught it, you can apply as a reader. There's no stipulation on that.
I always like to joke that I get to weasel my way into these opportunities because I just kind of walk in at the right time. And so I've been very fortunate that my desire to start a computer science program kind of aligned with the very beginning of this AP exam, because it's been a really, really good experience. I wouldn't have had this experience if I stayed in social studies classroom. And I interrupted somebody. Go ahead, whoever was talking.
It was me, Sean.
Oh, I don't care if I interrupted you. It's fine.
We do that often. We're both talkers. But as we're wrapping up, are there any final comments, any final, any takeaways that you have that you just want to share with the group? Otherwise, we'll wrap up in the next few minutes and get prepared for your students' final submissions.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Sheri, and then if anyone has questions, they can feel free to interject. So there's all of our contact information for Sheri, Sean, and myself. Feel free to reach out to them with any questions. Sean, did you want to note your email address in case people need to reach you later?
Yes, I was gonna go ahead and announce that. I committed to doing this mock exam session before some changes happened with my career, but it's kind of been in the process since January. I am taking a position with the Kentucky Department of Education this next school year. I will be, the title is K-12 Computer Science Lead and Computer Science / Information Technology Program Manager for the Office of Education Technology. So that email will change to sean.jackson@education.ky.gov. And that email's already active. I just didn't want to put on I was representing the Kentucky Department of Education through this, but I've been very fortunate to be able to work with Advanced Kentucky in many different capacities. And now I'm going to be working with them in kind of a different capacity where we're trying to keep everything that we're both entities, both the Kentucky Department of Education and Advanced Kentucky and KCT, or Kentucky. What's your acronym? What is it? Kentucky Science and Technology, KSTC.
STC, yeah.
Kind of keep those in line, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
Forces
I'm looking forward to this.
Forces are uniting.
I'm telling you, it's destiny. It's destiny.
It is.
Lots of things matched up. So I'm very fortunate to continue this journey.
Be prepared. We're going to work on getting computer science in every single school in the state of Kentucky, right, Sean?
That was the second item on my to-do list. I mean, I have a short list, but they're huge items. 1, create a comprehensive computer science plan for the state. 2, get computer science in every public school district in Kentucky. And 3, save the world. I don't know.
Well, thanks, Sean. Yeah, we look forward to working with you in your new role. So yeah, in the interim, reach out to Sean on Twitter. Reach out to any of us on Twitter. We'll be happy to get back to you. Yeah. Today's recording will be posted to the kyap2020.com website by the end of the day. If you need handouts from anything that you did in your breakout rooms or in the one main session, those can be found at the bit.ly link there as well. So if there are no other questions, then Sean, Sheri, any closing remarks before we sign off?
Just thank you all for participating today, and best of luck on your students' exams and wrapping up your school years. And happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Patrick,
exactly.
You all have been the rock stars, all of this, really have.
I'm telling you guys, as a person who's involved in, technology professional development for classroom teachers, not just computer science, but everybody, so many times, some of us who are good with technology, we get frustrated because it's like, man, we could be doing a lot more with remote learning and digital integration and all of this stuff. And it's kind of like it takes a worldwide pandemic for people to start realizing, what, we can do the same thing that we're doing in class just a little bit differently and open up the opportunities for more things to take place, variable schedules. So great job as teachers in the Commonwealth and other states adapting to an emergency situation and just making yourself shine.
I think that's the perfect way to end it. I don't know what else we could say. So, well, good luck to everyone as they finish out their school year. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be here to support you. So for Sean and Sheri, take care. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks.
Thank you all.